Hey guys, so this is your Chapter 9 review, and it's crazy because this is your last test before your final exam, so you really want to do your best on it, and I know you guys will do great. So we're going to start off with just simplifying radicals. So that's what this whole section is, and this is a big part of your test. So what we're going to do is I would suggest that on your test you start off with listing all of your perfect squares, and you can, oops, I missed one already, sorry guys. So you can do this with a calculator, okay? You don't have to wonder what they are, you don't have to wait for me to do it. So 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3, 4 times 4, 5 times 5, 6 times 6, 7 times 7, 8 times 8, 9 times 9. I would just go up to 100 maybe. Well, maybe we should keep going because we can. So 11, 12, 169. So look for these first before you start simplifying. Maybe I've just given you a perfect square. So look for those. That will make your life a lot easier. So, square root of 36. I'm going to look here. 36 is a perfect square. So, my answer is 6. Nice and simple. 49, is that a perfect square? Yes, it is. So my answer is 7. 169, that's a perfect square. So that's going to be 13. And then we get to 24. So 24, unfortunately, isn't on our list. So I'm going to figure out what's the biggest perfect square I can divide by 24. I can test them all out. I would start at 16. 24 divided by 16 doesn't work. 24 divided by 9 doesn't work. But 24 divided by 4 does work. So 4 times 6 gives us 24. Square root of 4 is 2. And square root of 6 is a decimal, so I'm going to leave that in there. Alright, 48. That's not a perfect square, but the biggest perfect square that will divide by 48. Now some of you might have picked 4. 4 does work, but remember it has to be the biggest perfect square. So the biggest perfect square would be 16. 16 times 3 gives us 48. So 4 root 3. 63. 63 is not a perfect square. The biggest perfect square you can divide by 63 would be 9. 9 times 7 gives us 63. Square root of 9 is 3. 7 is a decimal, so radical 7. Alright, then we get into the more challenging ones. So don't freak out about these. Remember, just ignore the outer number at first and just pretend it's square root of 18. So the square root of 18 is not a perfect square. The biggest perfect square you can divide by 18 would be 9. Oops, that's not a very good 9. 9 times 2. And then if you want, you can just continue to bring that 3 down. So I'm going to simplify. Square root of 9 is 3. Oops. Root 2. And then I still have that outer 3 that I have to deal with. So I'm going to bring that down next to the 3 I pulled out. And remember to multiply those. So 3 times 3 is 9, and then we have radical 2 here. Alright, so a little extra step with these. Alright, ignore that 6 for now, just pretend it's square root of 20. 20 is not a perfect square. The biggest perfect square I can divide by 20 would be 4. 4 times 5 gives me 20. And then if you want, you can just keep bringing that 6 down. Don't deal with it yet. So I have square root of 4 is 2, radical 5 stays underneath, and then I have that 6 that I'm just going to keep bringing down. It's not a 6. And then I'm going to multiply those outer 2 numbers, so I would get 12, and then radical 5. Alright, and then last one like that, ignore that 4. So I have the square root of 45. The biggest perfect square I can divide by 45 would be 9. 9 times 5. I'm going to bring down that 4. Not going to deal with it quite yet. Square root of 9 is 3. Radical 5 stays underneath. Then I'm going to bring down that 4. Multiply those 2 outer numbers, and you get 12 root 5. Look at this. Never had that before. So different radical and outer numbers, but we come up with the exact same answer. Alright, last section. I want you guys to be very careful with 10, 11, and 12. We've got those variables with exponents. So remember, look for your odds and your even numbers. Remember, evens are 2, 4, 6, 8. So if they're even, put a little smiley face by these. Those are the nice and simple ones. You're just going to cut it in half. And then your odd numbers are not so simple because you have to do a little bit of extra work. So let's try these out. So 18. Well, remember 2, 4, 6, 8. So that's a even number. So I'm just going to cut it in half. So 18 cut in half is 9. So the square root of x to the 18th is just x to the 9th. All right, 17. Crud. That's not an even number. So I'm going to have to go down to the next smallest even number. So if I go down 1, that would give me 16. And then to get 17, I need 1 more. So I've gone down 1. Still gives me 17. But now I can cut this one in half. So half of 16 is 8. So I'm going to have x to the 8th. That comes out. And then x to the 1st is odd, so that's going to stay in. All of your odd numbers should look like this. Something comes out, and that x to the 1st stays in. All right, this one has an added challenge of that number on the outside. So square root of 9, I know that's a perfect square. So that's just 3. And then x to the 12th, well, 12 is a nice even number, so I can just cut that in half. So it would give me 3x to the 6th. And then you're done. All right, so that's simplifying radicals. The next section is going to be multiplying and dividing them, so product and quotient. So remember, when you're multiplying, they have to have that radical symbol. So square root of 4 times the square root of 8, that would give me the square root of 32. And then I'm going to think, what's the biggest perfect square I can divide by 32? Well, a lot of numbers work, but the biggest perfect square would be 16. So 16 times 2 would give me 32. Square root of 16 is 4, that comes out. Square root of 2 stays underneath. Next one, we have outer numbers and inner numbers now. So remember, multiply those outer numbers first. So 4 times 3 gives me 12, that's outside. And then multiply those radicals. 3 times 6 gives me 18. Now you're not done yet. Always look, can I simplify this 18? So this problem right here has become like these problems right here. So the square root of 18, got to figure out biggest perfect square would be 9 times 2. So that would give me 3. Root 2, bring down that 12. So 12 times 3 gives me 36. Root 2. So always look at that radical and see if you can simplify it. All right, this one, multiply those outer numbers first. So 18. 5 times 2 gives me 10. So I have 10. Can I simplify it? Well, there's not a perfect square that goes into it, so this one is finished. All right, next page. We have continued to multiply up here. So 2 times 4 is 8. And then square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 9. Now, can I simplify that radical? Well, yes, I know the square root of 9 is 3. Oops, sorry. So I have an outside 3 and an outside 8 that I'm going to multiply together. So I'm going to get 24. Not 29, 24. All right, couple of division problems here. So remember, these are different rules. So this was like a totally different section. So the square root of 5 cannot be in the bottom of the fraction. I have to get rid of that. So in order to do that, in order to get rid of a radical in the denominator, you're going to multiply the top and the bottom by that radical, or that square root. So that is going to eliminate this radical because the square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is the square root of 25. What is the square root of 25? Well, it's just 5. So that means on the bottom, I'm going to have a 5. That way I have no square root on the bottom. Now we look at the top. We have a 3 times a radical 5. You cannot multiply things that one is out, one is in. So I'm just going to leave it like that. 3 radical 5. Now always double check. See if you can simplify these outer numbers. 3 ABC 5. Can't do that. So this is my final answer. Number 18, same thing. We can't have a square root on the bottom. So to get rid of that, I'm going to multiply by a radical 10, square root of 10, on the top and the bottom. So that's going to eliminate square root of 10. Because the square root of 10 times the square root of 10, you should know by now, square root of 100, or just 10. So 10 is on the bottom. Remember, square root of 10 times the square root of 10 is 10. Square root of 9 times the square root of 9 is 9. So remember that pattern. So it's just going to come out. So 4 root 10, remember, I can't multiply one that's out, one that's in. So I'm going to have 4 on the outside, 10 under the radical. Now for this one, I can type this into the ABC button. If you do 4 ABC 10, it should simplify to 2 over 5. Okay, and then just remember you have that radical 10 on the top. So don't forget the ABC button. Write that down on your paper. Do the ABC when you've got those fractions. All right, enough of those. Then we move on to the sum and the difference. So remember, these are nice and simple. If you have root 7, that means I can just add up those outer numbers. So 4 plus 6 is 10. And then I'm just going to keep that radical 7. All done. All right, square root of 3 times square root of 3. So I can add or subtract these outer ones. So 8 minus 2 is 6. I'm going to keep that radical 3. Square root of 2 times square root of 2, I can keep those. So I have 14, radical 2. So never add those radicals. These are all like terms, so I can just add and subtract those outer. So 5 plus 3 is 8, minus 2 is 6. So I have 6, and then radical 10. Oops, sorry. I have, only these are like, so I'm going to focus on those first. So 9 minus 5 is 4, and then I have radical 11. And then this is just all by itself, so I'm just going to bring that down, and that's all you can do. Alright, so I have the Pythagorean Theorem here. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So this is A, this would be B, and this would be C. So I have X squared plus B squared, sorry guys, 12 squared. Got ahead of myself here. So I know what B is, so I can write that down. So I have 12 squared is B equals, my C is 13. So I'm going to figure out what these are. So 12 squared is 144. 13 squared is 169. And then I have to get this by itself. So I'm going to subtract 144. So I have x squared equals 25. Last step, get that x squared by itself. So I have x equals 5. So that means this side right here is 5. Alright, last one guys. So here's my A, here's my B, and here's my C. So I have 3 squared plus 7 squared equals C squared or X squared, whatever you have. So I have 9 plus 49 is equal to C squared. So I have 58 is equal to C squared. And then what you're going to do is you're going to see what's the biggest perfect square that will fit into 58. So if I were you, I would start dividing, and to me it seems like 4 might work. Oh, it doesn't. So then you might test 16. Does 16 work? 16 doesn't work. Maybe test 9. Nothing seems to work for this one. So if no perfect square will go into 58, then what you're going to do is you're just going to leave it like this. C equals the square root of 58. And you're done. Alright guys, test tomorrow. Be prepared. Let me know if you have any questions, and good luck.